All right, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, wherever you're calling from, and welcome to another Air Center Networking Fridays. My name is Leah Mupas Segui, and I am a senior associate at the Pew Charitable Trusts as part of their Preventing Ocean Plastics program. And I'm also a former policy fellow of GEO Blue Planet, which makes me extra excited to be with them again today. The theme that stands out to me about GEO Blue Planet is the way they bring together different stakeholders to address environmental challenges, specifically in their use of ocean and coastal observations to develop creative applications to implement global policy frameworks. The ocean is too big for any one organization to do it alone, and we need an organization like GEO Blue Planet to bring the people and the science together because this work is inherently collaborative. And to talk about GEO Blue Planet, today I have Doctors Emily Smail and Audrey Hasson. Dr. Emily Smail is an executive director of the GEO Blue Planet Initiative and a senior faculty specialist at the NOAA University of Maryland Cooperative Institute for Climate and Satellites. She also serves as the co-chair of GEO Aquawatch Initiative Outreach and User Engagement Working Group. She specializes in using science to support informed decision-making and the development of effective ocean, conservation, and development policies. She has a Bachelor's of Science in Biology from Pennsylvania State University and a PhD in Biology from the University of Southern California, where she researched water quality and marine biogeochemistry. And Dr. Audrey Hasson is the head of the GEO Blue Planet European office, hosted by Mercator Ocean International, as part of the EU for Ocean Obs project. She is a physical oceanographer by training, interested in studying water masses using remote sensing and in situ observations. She holds a PhD from the University of Toulouse and went to work on her postdoctoral research for 3 major space agencies, including the European Space Agency and the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory. So if it's your first time joining us, the format for today is we'll have about 40 minutes for the talk and then 20 minutes for questions. And if you have questions at any time, feel free to type them in the Q&A box and I will read them for you. And with that, I'd like to welcome Dr. Audrey Hasson and Dr. Emily Smail today.
Thank you, Leah, for the really nice introduction. I will share my screen now. Here we go. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, perfect. Here we go. So yes, today, as Leah was saying, we're going to give you an introduction on GEO Blue Planet. And then I will be doing this, and then Emily will take the floor, and she will give you overviews of 4 major successes of GEO Blue Planet activities. And then I will take the mic back to give you a really quick outlook of the future of GEO Blue Planet in the coming decade. But first of all, the GEO Blue Planet is the coastal and ocean arm of the Group on Earth Observation, GEO. And GEO is an intergovernmental partnership working to improve the availability, access, and use of ocean observation for the benefit of society. GEO envisions a future where decisions and actions are informed by coordinated, comprehensive, and sustained Earth observation. This GEO is a global network connecting government institutions, academic and research institutions, data providers, businesses, engineers, scientists, and experts. We have above 110 members countries and 135 participating organizations. So it's a really big network around the Earth observations. And GEO has 3 main priorities that include sustainable development goals, the climate actions, and disaster risk reduction. And to answer these 3 priorities, GEO created 8 social benefit areas where Earth observation play a key role in decision making. And I'm showing them here. To be able to answer these 8 social benefit areas, GEO has created over 70 work programs, activities and initiatives. And I'm showing here a few of them, and you can see at the bottom left, we have the Ocean and Society Blue Planet Initiative, and that's us. The Blue Planet Initiative aims at sustained development and use of ocean and coastal observation for the benefit of society. GEO Blue Planet is a network of ocean and coastal scientists, but also social scientists and end-user representatives from stakeholder groups. We have 2 main objectives. The first one is processing data into information. So you have the data of Earth observation that that scientists translate into knowledge, and then it's our task to transform this knowledge into information. And we need to link this information with social needs in line with the GEO engagement, the 3 engagement priorities that I just described before. And in 2020, GEO Blue Planet wrote its work plan for the next 2 years. And the 3 main actions are to support the GEO engagement priorities. And I'm going to show you how we do this. Strengthen its linkages with stakeholders and forge decision support tools. To do this, so you have the GEO goals that they're translated into these 8 thematic areas, and we translated them for the ocean, linking the ocean and coastal information with society. And with these 8 overarching thematic areas, GEO Blue Planet has in 2021, 7 thematic working groups. We have 1 on fisheries, 1 on coastal flooding, marine litter, eutrophication, waterborne disease, sargassum, and oil spill. And each of these working groups operate core actions, core projects. I'm listing here a list, but of course, each working group is doing different projects, but these ones are the major ones. So we create information hubs to promote all the information that we create from data and knowledge. We developed indicators, such as the SDGs indicators, best practices white papers, and we also produce some stakeholder needs reporting, because it is important to always align the actions that we do with the stakeholder needs. And then to support these core actions from the working groups, we have some cross-cutting activities working group working in the coordination of our actions with GEO's actions to make sure that we're always aligned with the engagement priorities of GEO, but we also provide some networking tools such as the Oceanscape. We also do capacity building and stakeholder engagement. The GEO Blue Planet Initiative has an operating structure that is distributed this way. So we have the working groups doing the actual work, the everyday work for producing the information hub or creating the indicators. And to support those, we have the Secretariat that Emily and I are leading. And the Secretariat works at coordinating, supporting, and managing the activities from the working groups. And we promote GEO Blue Planet activities and foster stakeholder engagement. The 2 secretariats are supported by, on one side, as Leah was saying, NOAA for the American Secretariat, and the European one is supported by the European Commission through the EU for Ocean Ops foreign policy instruments. And then we have a management committee, and they provide us support and they review our progress. They are made of the steering committee, co-chairs, and shareholders. Then we have the steering committee. They provide guidance, identify opportunities. At most, we have 35 people. And I need to say that right now we are going through a renewal, and I want to welcome again our new steering committee members if they are watching. And on top of this, we have an advisory board, and there are high-level profiles providing strategic orientation and resource mobilization. You can find more information on the structure, but of course, also on our activities on our website, which is geoblueplanet.org. And I will now leave the floor to Emily.
Thank you, Audrey. So I'm going to give some examples of projects that we have worked on that fall into these 4 categories that Audrey outlined. Next slide. And so I'll show one on transforming knowledge into information. So working to gather information from various partners and link it with stakeholders for Sargassum. Working with the United Nations Environment Program to develop indicators for the SDGs on eutrophication. Writing best practices and scientific review for UN Environment on marine litter data, and providing linkages for stakeholders with science observing experts for oil spills. Next slide. And so we'll start here with some of the Sargassum working group activities. Next slide. So we started working on Sargassum after some user engagement workshops that were conducted in the Caribbean. So one of them was arranged through the Minister for Environment and a few other items in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, who was connected with one of our steering committee members. And then there also was a workshop organized by Future Earth Coast, the Organization of East Caribbean States, and the European Space Agency. And in these workshops, there were a lot of discussions with local stakeholders about what their priority challenges are. And from there, we identified that Sargassum is a real issue in the Caribbean. Next slide. So it has been increasing in the amounts of floating algae that end up washing up on beaches on the Caribbean, as well as the continental Americas, Gulf of Mexico, and the west coast of Africa. And it's been causing a lot of challenges for these regions in terms of tourism, as a lot of these areas are very highly economically reliant on tourism with their beautiful beaches and whatnot, as well as fisheries. So you can imagine that it's hard to go fishing in a giant pool of Sargassum. And you can detect Sargassum with satellites. And so we took this on as a project that we could help facilitate. Next slide. So to start off, we started collaborating with the International Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO. They have a subcommission for the Caribbean and adjacent regions called IOCaribe. And we're also now linking in with the IOC Africa group and UN environment groups that work on these challenges in the Atlantic. And we had a workshop in collaboration with the Mexican government to talk about Sargassum, as well as oil spills, which is another challenge that was presented through some of the workshops, bringing together different experts to understand who's doing what and further outlining the user needs. Next slide. And from there, we determined that a lot of the users need integrated monitoring. So there are a lot of groups that are doing Sargassum monitoring from satellites, as well as in situ or citizen science data collection methods. A lot of them were not connected with each other. And so we worked with different partners who are working to integrate some of the information, and as well as to start collecting the best practices that are being developed by various stakeholders on management and supporting general networking. So Sargassum colleagues who are working on the research and applications can connect with each other, and the stakeholders who have questions are able to find them. And through that, we decided to make a centralized access point for information related to Sargassum to try to facilitate some of this information sharing. Next slide. So in collaboration with IOC, Atlantos, and the Atlantic International Research Center, we we have put together a Sargassum Information Hub that has information about sargassum in the Atlantic and also provides links to monitoring, management, research, has a directory for events and individuals. And we're working with the Air Center and other partners moving forward to update it into multiple languages, as well as to integrate new features such as country pages, which have been requested by Mexico, as well as some colleagues in the Gulf of Guinea who are interested in having more region-specific pages. Next slide. And so this is the overall scheme of the information that we're trying to support. So you need, in order to really get a hold of sargassum impacts, in situ data, remote sensing, forecasting, understanding the science. So why is it growing more and distributing differently, as well as management and best practices. And so we're working to pull in various partners who are working on these components and help them share their information. Next slide. So next I'll talk about the development of indicators that we've been working on with an example of indicator development for Sustainable Development Goal 14. Next slide. As Audrey mentioned in the beginning, the Sustainable Development Goals are one of the priority areas for the Group on Earth Observations. And as the ocean and coastal arm of GEO, we have been focusing on SDG 14, which is life below water. For those of you who aren't familiar, the way the SDGs are set up, they have a goal, and then each goal has target, and each target has several indicators. And they assign custodian agencies to the various indicators, and they are responsible for developing the method and compiling information into the finalized report for the SDGs. And the United Nations Environment Program is the custodian for SDG 14.1.1, which is the Index of Coastal Eutrophication and Floating Plastic Debris. And for the eutrophication portion, UN Environment started doing consultations with a lot of the regional seas programs and member countries, and found that a lot of regions and countries do not have regular nutrient and in situ chlorophyll data collected to be able to report on eutrophication status in their coastal waters. And so to help move things forward, they took a progressive monitoring approach where they were going to take some global products to augment some data as the member countries are working to collect a little bit more detailed data in their waters. And so we worked with them to develop some sub-indicators that are using satellite chlorophyll. Next slide. And so this method is published in this manual, Understanding the State of the Ocean, which also includes methods on a few other SDG indicators that UN Environment is the custodian for. And we're working not only to process the data, but also to provide some ancillary information to help with decision-making for countries. And for that, we have partnered with Esri. And I have a link here underneath the manual to a hub site that we're setting up in collaboration with Esri and UN Environment that has information about the indicator and eutrophication and the use of chlorophyll as a proxy. Next slide. So as I mentioned, there's a progressive monitoring approach. And so what we were working on currently is these level 1 global data products. And so these are globally available satellite data products. And so we put a method that would look at analyzing chlorophyll deviations as well as anomalies. Next slide. And so Esri took the method and the data products, which are publicly available. One is an ocean color product that's produced by Plymouth Marine Lab and ESA and distributed by Copernicus. And another product is a NOAA product distributed by the NOAA Coast Watch program. And Esri processed it according to the method and passed that data along to UN Environment and set up a reporting dashboard. Next slide. And so we're working further to move beyond just the simplified indicator, which is required by the SDG framework, to try to incorporate additional information such as riverine inputs or land use changes, so that countries can tailor their in situ sampling and responses a little bit better. So for example, if you see that there is a spot where you have a lot of anomalies in chlorophyll, that means that you're likely having algal blooms there, and they could be caused by eutrophication. They could also be caused by natural processes. So the hope is that member countries will then target some of those areas for their in situ sampling where they have limited capacity. Next slide. And next I'll talk about work that we did on marine litter data and best practices. Next slide. So again, in collaboration with the United Nations Environment Program, there was a resolution at their General Assembly a few years ago for them to produce a data site that has information about marine litter. And they also are responsible for the marine litter component of monitoring SDG 14. And so we had some Blue Planet colleagues that attended an expert group where they had asked us to compile information on some of the existing data sets. And we also had a colleague who does ocean modeling from Blue Planet who was attending that. Next slide. And from there, they requested that we produce a white paper that gives an overview of what would be needed to have a global platform for monitoring marine litter data. Next slide. And so in this study, we put together an inventory of existing monitoring technologies. We did an inventory of some of the major marine litter databases, an overview of some of the indicators, plastic value chain, as well as existing platforms that could be utilized and how they could be integrated into a digital ecosystem. One of the major challenges is that a lot of the marine litter data is collected using different methods, and that makes it really difficult to compare. So for example, one country may be collecting data on beach litter and weighing it, where another group is counting the number of bottles. And so there are some big challenges with that, especially when you get down into micro litter and things of that sort. And so from the white paper, UN Environment is now partnering with IBM, and they're working on a pilot with the Wilson Center where they're trying to flesh out some of the integration of a few citizen science databases. And we'll continue to work with them to try to help facilitate integration of marine litter data. Next slide. So another component of the marine litter data is ocean tracking, and Eric Cassanier, who's on our steering committee, has been also working with the UN Environment on some of the modeling to help understand plastic waste distribution. Next slide. And as I mentioned, a big problem with understanding marine litter is that there's a lack of clear indicators so that countries can tell change over time, as well as methods for collecting data. People are using different methods, makes it hard to compare. And so we also have had our working group that supported a few workshops to talk about these topics, as well as hosted a marine litter session for the Ocean Best Practices Initiative. Next slide. And lastly, I'll give an overview of some work that we did linking stakeholders who had an information need with experts who could fill those needs related to oil spills. Next slide. So as part of our engagement in the Caribbean, local stakeholders had indicated that there is a need for detection of oil spills. So there isn't a lot of satellite data surveillance going on, for example. And they've had a couple of incidents where oil washed up on the beaches and they weren't sure where it had originated from, as well as potential bilge dumping from vessel traffic. And also there is a regional action center who had been working with member countries in the region and saying that they also need GIS information system about where refineries are, things of that sort, as long as it's publicly available. And so we're now partnering with the regional GEO group of the Americas, AmeriGeo, again, IOC UNESCO, colleagues at NOAA, and then the Regional Action Center that supports the Cartagena Convention training of oil spills, the RAC Repetic Caribe. Next slide. And what has fleshed out with that is, so Blue Planet had been, approached by these colleagues in the Caribbean. And so we've connected them with AmeriGeo, who is going to be working to develop a oil spill information toolkit for the region based on some technology that they already have set up for the data hub that they have in the Americas. And so this will include information that is needed for responding to oil spills, such as where refineries are, where response centers are, where environmentally sensitive areas are, and things of that sort. Next slide. And so we're looking at doing this as a pilot to start out with Trinidad and Tobago. And in Trinidad and Tobago, they have an Institute of Marine Affairs, Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, and Environment Management Authority, who have responsibility for tracking oil spills. And so we have linked them up with the NOAA Satellite Analysis Branch, who does routine monitoring of oil spills with satellites in US waters, to arrange discussions for a training where the stakeholders in Trinidad and Tobago would be trained to look at the freely available satellite data and identify oil spills themselves, and then would be able to take over, monitoring for their own region. Next slide. And now I'll turn it back over to Audrey to talk about where we're looking to move in the future.
All right, thank you, Emily, for such great example of successes from GEO Blue Planet. I'm now going to give you a brief introduction on where GEO Blue Planet is heading, because right now GEO Blue Planet is in a really good place because the UN Decade for Ocean Sciences is coming up. It's going to be launched in early June, and it's a good time to rethink, the contour of our mission and how we can support this UN Decade. So first of all, for those who are not familiar with the UN Decade, it's the UN Nation Decade of Ocean Sciences for Sustainable Development. It's going to run from 2021 to 2030. And the idea is to support efforts to gather ocean stakeholders worldwide behind a common framework that will ensure ocean science can fully support countries in creating improved conditions for sustainable development of the ocean. And as you read this, you see directly that the GEO Blue Planet work is well aligned with the Decade objectives. And we had the first call for the UN Decade actions, which solicited idea programs. And the UN got over 200 ideas submitted in response to this call. And there are various programs where we can actually collaborate and we can support them. Some of them are listed here, such as 4C, the digital twin, the observing system integration, the coastal predicts, the biomolecular ocean observing network, the ocean practices, and marine life 2030. What we're trying to do here is at the last executive committee of GEO last month, they supported our project of leveraging GEO convening power interdisciplinary work program to organize and advance changes in ocean observation data. And the idea is that GEO Blue Planet will find all the actions relevant to the UN Decade in the GEO different programs. So I've shown you earlier that we have over 70 different groups working for GEO, and we'll find all the relevant actions to the UN Decade and put them together to support the UN Decade for Ocean Sciences. And we'll work this way, and we have a summit next month to an internal, summit next month to discuss this kind of things. But if you have questions, we'll be very happy to answer them. And that's it, Leah. Back to you.
Great. Thank you both for that presentation. It's great to see just how diverse GEO Blue Planet portfolio is. All right, we have a number of questions. First, I'll start with a question for Emily. What are the relationships between GEO Blue Planet Initiative and other GEO initiatives, as well as flagship projects and community activities? The reason I ask is that GEO initiatives seem to be different silos.
Thank you. That's a great question. So those of you who aren't familiar with GEO, a lot of the initiatives, community activities, and flagships are set up voluntarily by different member countries and participating organizations. And so they can end up, a little siloed because, you'll have one supported by NASA and another one supported by Conservation International, and they don't always collaborate. But that's something that GEO is really working to improve. And I'll say, as Audrey mentioned, one of the things that we're really hoping with the ocean decade is that we can use this as a way to work with the full GEO work program to try to get people involved in ocean and coastal activities and working to collaborate. One of the big challenges for that is just person power and time. So the GEO Secretariat is going to be providing some support to us on this. But we'll be looking to get more resources for some of the networking so that we can collaborate and break down some of these silos.
Great, thanks, Emily. Next question for Audrey. Does GEO Blue Planet have offices or partners in Africa, namely Nigeria?
We only have two offices, one in France that was created last November, and the historical one, I want to say, led by Emily in the US. We are looking to have one hopefully next year in Korea, but we don't have one in Africa for now. Maybe that could be a real good thing in the future. But we do have partners in Africa, but I'm not sure. Maybe Emily can take this one. But I'm not sure we have partners in Nigeria. But if you're from Nigeria and you are interested in what we're doing in our working groups, please send us an email, and we'll be happy to collaborate with you.
Thank you, Audrey. So I'll say that one of our co-chairs is from the University of Ghana. And we have a few other participants on the steering committee and working groups who are from Ghana and Kenya, South Africa. But I don't think that we have anyone that's been working with us in Nigeria, but we would certainly be happy to include that. And, that's something that we would like to do, is do more engagement with Africa, particularly now that we have Audrey on the similar time zone. Yeah, if you're interested in working with us, please let us know. We'll be happy to talk to you about that.
Great, thanks. So another question about engaging with GEO Blue Planet. How does one engage with Blue Planet to share information on sargassum?
Great. So on the Sargassum Information Hub, so we do have a general email, info@sargassumhub.org, where you can send it, and that will go to me and Audrey, as well as some of our colleagues at Lantos. And so we, as I mentioned, are continually working to add information to the hub. So if you have information that you would like added to the Sargassum Hub and like us to share, please reach out to us. As I mentioned, we're also working with the Air Center to set up some country pages, and so we've had expressions of interest of those for Mexico and Gulf of Guinea, but would be, we're hopeful to do other regions down the line. So if you have information you'd like to share, feel free to reach out to us by email. And I'll say that there also is an email listserv that you can sign up with called SARGNet that's operated by Florida International University. And so there's a sign up list link to that on the Sargassum Hub. And so that has a pretty great membership of people working on Sargassum that, you know, share information through that forum as well.
Great, thanks for that information on Sargassum. Audrey, a question about the Marine Litter Working Group. Could you elaborate on the global platform for monitoring marine litter? Will it be an open platform? How could we contribute with local data? And what kind of data will be available? Is it open ocean, seafloor, water column, etc.?
That's a really good question. So the global platform is going to be operated by UNEP under the Global Partnership on Marine Litter, the GPML. There will be information at every level of the water column and the ground floor as well. The platform is only in beta right now, but you will be able to submit your observation, and there will be a process of reviewing the information, your data, and you can add them to there. I'm still fairly new to this working group. Maybe Emily has like more precise information on this.
Thanks, Audrey. So I just put a link in the chat to the Global Partnership on Marine Litter digital platform. So I'd say it's broader than just environmental data. So we were helping, so the white paper we did for UN Environment was focused on environmental data, but they're also looking at incorporating a lot of other information. We are still in the process of, you know, working out who has what data and how to integrate it. But that's something that, you know, over the next couple of years, we're hoping to collaborate further with UN Environment. But I'll say if you do have a database, we do have a survey for available data sets for marine litter. If you'd like to add yours, I'll put a link to that in the chat.
Great. Yeah. Thanks everyone for being interested about the type of data that we're working with and wanting to contribute your own. This question for either of you. For the different examples, you've showed successful examples of integrated work within the tropics. What about the integration of these monitoring and alerting systems in a broader observation warning system? As noted by the UN Ocean Science Decade meetings in the Western Tropical Atlantic and globally. This is especially important in the Caribbean and SIDS, where the same authorities or communities are probably responsible for more than one of these threats.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So as part of the GEO priorities, one is the semi-framework for disaster risk reduction. And for that, they are hoping to put together, you know, multi-hazard warning systems. And so that, you know, that's something that GEO wants to support. I'll say for the Sargassum and oil spill discussions, we have had some discussions about how to integrate those with existing systems, as well as, you know, trying to increase capacity for flooding on reef-lined islands and in the tropics as well. So I don't have an exact answer on how we are planning to do that, other than we are really interested in talking to stakeholders about facilitating that. And I'd say so for the GEO side of things, we won't be delivering, you know, warning systems. We're facilitating our partners and trying to build capacity so that they can deliver the warning systems. So whether that's with, you know, IOC, WMO, or other partners who are responsible for disaster in different regions. You know, in some places it's complicated that they have, you know, very different agencies. As the question referenced in, you know, small countries and small islands, you'll have a few people who are responsible for a very large portfolio of issues. And so obviously we want to make it easy for them so they're not having to go to 5 different sites to get warnings or know where to get the information. So yes, that's something we're aware of, and we're interested in trying to help facilitate that moving forward.
Yeah, I think if I may add, Emily said something really important about GEO Blue Planet is that we're not creating any services. There are international and national agencies creating the services. We're here to coordinate and facilitate the work of people, of scientists and social scientists together. So I think that's what Emily, is trying to say, is that we're not going to have like online platforms with early warning systems, but we're helping people to build these platforms.
So just a question for more information about the oil spill monitoring. They're wondering if it will cover Brazil and if the platform is able to identify the source of the oil spill.
Thank you. So we're hoping to get build capacity in the region to do the full region, so Caribbean region. So that would include Brazil. Right now, we're doing a pilot with the colleagues in Trinidad and Tobago, and so we're discussing with them that they'll probably start small, but see how much time and capacity it takes them, and if they're able to deliver information for other regions, and that's something that we can discuss with them. And if not, we can look at training other partners in other countries so that they can do the oil spill surveillance. So with the satellite data, you can detect potential oil spills. And so one of the reasons that they also would be incorporating the other information, such as vessel traffic or locations of refineries, is to try to help track down the sources. So sometimes it's pretty clear where you can see on the satellite image that there's a ship with a trail of oil behind it that was obviously the source of bilge dumping. Sometimes it's not as clear and you have to do a little bit more surveillance. But the satellite data is free and open, so that makes it a little bit easier. And if there's a major spill, there is also opportunities that some of the commercial satellite data providers under disaster agreements will provide some free imagery, which can be helpful with that as well.
And I think also a little bit like the Sargassum project started in the Caribbean region only, and now we've realized that, we don't realize, but like the Sargassum is an issue across the entire tropical Atlantic Ocean. So we're extending the region of interest to the Western Africa, and we're starting collaboration with colleagues in Western Africa. So I think it's a little bit the same with all the working groups. We're starting with one region as a pilot because that's where our stakeholders communicate their needs. But of course, the oil spill is a global problem, and we will try to create capacity that can be interoperable in other regions. So if you have interest in like a particular region and you have an institution behind you, we are really happy to talk with you, and we'll definitely look at oil spills in different regions in the future. Thank you.
Great. Along those lines, I have a few questions about capacity building. So on the SDG 14.1.1 indicator for eutrophication, are there any capacity building plans for countries, as there seems to be little technical information and knowledge?
Yes, so that's something that we are in our next stage of working to support this effort, or looking to do some capacity development. For example, there is a regional seas program in the North Pacific who has a technique that uses regionally tuned algorithms and more specific regional information to predict eutrophication with some of the satellite data. And so we're hoping to do some capacity development in other regions to try to increase some of the data. I'll say that there are some other programs. So for example, the International Atomic Energy Association has a project called Remarco, where they have a large amount of countries. I think it's about 30 countries in Central and South America who are building capacity for 14.11, so litter monitoring as well as eutrophication. And so they are forming a network of researchers to try to build a capacity in that region for collecting data on eutrophication. And so one of our new steering committee members is involved in that project. But we're hoping to promote similar capacity development activities in other regions as well.
Great, thanks. Audrey, does GEO Blue Planet include social science experts while working with local communities?
So historically, GEO Blue Planet was more oriented towards physical and geochemical oceanographers. And we're trying to get more social scientists on board, because I think, and we all think, it's really important to be able to answer our users' needs. And between the scientists that Emily and I are and the understanding of the users, we definitely need some social scientists. So we have a couple new steering committee members who are part of the social sciences. But we're definitely still looking for more collaboration and more people to work with from the social sciences. So if you are one of them, whoever asked this question, or if you are one of them watching this YouTube video, please shoot us an email, and that would be really, really helpful for us.
And I'll add, we just bring in a few more steering committee members who are a little bit more on the social science side of things, but we could always, use more connections, as Audrey was saying.
Great, we have, let's see, there's a connection for information for the Nigerian Institute for Oceanography. So I'll copy that for you, and you could reach out later. And if you're interested in working with GEO Blue Planet, please email Audrey and Emily. All right, next question.
I will add the email, the generic secretariat email address in the chat box, so you guys can send us emails.
Thank you. This question's for either of you. What process or methodology do you use to collect user requirements for future development of services? And how do you assess the local impact of the delivered service?
Thank you. So that's a really great question. So I'll say we have been doing it so far kind of informally, so with workshops and then documenting it in workshop reports and things of that sort. But we are discussing as we move forward, having a more formal way of sharing some of the requirements. So for example, we had a steering committee call last night with some colleagues in the Pacific that have already collected a lot of user requirements, and so we're going to be discussing with some of our steering committee members who have done that type of work on ways that we can get that information out to the community. So we'll be working to improve that moving forward. It's always a challenge because a lot of the best follow-up is kind of in person. So we're trying to keep a human to human component of the networking, especially if you just do requirements. We're finding that really having a personal facilitation to move things forward is helpful. But again, that takes a lot of time and effort. But in terms of the part of the question about stakeholder impacts, there are efforts ongoing to try to evaluate the impacts of some of the services. So NOAA IUs, for example, one of our steering committee members, Ralph Rayner, is working with them on trying to do evaluations of the impacts of some of these services. And that's also something that's part of Audrey's portfolio to do for some of the European projects. And we have a lot of interest in that. So that's something else that we'll be working to try to understand and promote for the sake of the community.
Great, thank you. Does GEO Blue Planet have any work on seabed mining, either planned for the future, or there have been discussions on seabed mining within the Blue Planet network?
I can say that we do not have a working group on this right now, and I don't think we have discussed it in the recent past, at least since I arrived. But that could be a really interesting topic. So once again, if you think this is a topic that we should push forward, please send us an email and we can definitely chat about it.
Great, thanks. We have a question, I think it's for the Marine Litter platform. Any idea on standard data format for the open data platform? For example, net CDF or other, so we could have all the metadata information available.
I am not sure exactly right now what format will be used, but what I know for sure is that professionals are working on this, and I will make sure at least that because I've been working on NetCDF for 15 years now, and I will make sure that everyone has like easy access, because one of the idea behind GEO Blue Planet is to facilitate the access and utilization of Earth observation data. So for sure, we will make sure that the format are easy to use and the metadata is included as well.
Yeah, and I'd say UN Environment is well aware of that and is bringing in data experts from various groups. And as I mentioned, working with IBM and the Wilson Center on trying to do interoperability. So I'll put a link to the chat for one of the projects they're working on with the Wilson Center. But they've been looking a lot at data interoperability and formats and things of that sort. So that's definitely being discussed and thought about.
Does GEO Blue Planet have any projects related to marine spatial planning in Africa?
So we don't have any active projects. I'll say that we did do a workshop in collaboration with the Air Center in Cape Verde that was talking about Micronesia, San Tome, Principe, and there was a lot of interest from the colleagues at that workshop in marine spatial planning information. We do have steering committee members who specialize in using information for marine spatial planning. So that could be a project that we, if we find a stakeholder who's interested, that we could facilitate down the line. But we don't currently have any projects actively going on with that.
All right, and along the conversation of Africa, are there any capacity building programs for Africa specifically?
Part of my portfolio will be to focus on Africa, and I'm sure in the coming months and years, we'll be working on this, and we're already starting to work with colleagues from Western Africa on the Sargassum. But there is clearly a need for capacity building on oil spill and on marine litter and all the working groups. Basically, we're developing under GEO Blue Planet. So not right now, but for sure, this is on top of my list for the future.
And I'll just add that we were hoping, so the GEO Plenary, GEO does a week every year, and it's supposed to be in South Africa. And so we were hoping we would be able to do more engagement in Africa for that, but the in-person has been canceled because of COVID anyway. So hopefully someday we'll be able to get an in-person training, but in the meantime, we're trying to figure out, how to do things virtually.
Great. Does GEO Blue Planet, or maybe GEO generally, have any education programs to engage with young generations on ocean issues?
We do not currently. I'll say that we have been taking in fellows. So Leah was one of our fantastic fellows, but they're more post-grad people who were working with us. I'd say at this point, just with our current capacity, we don't really have the bandwidth to work with early education, but certainly maybe some of our intermediaries could be involved in those types of activities.
Great. Audrey, does GEO Blue Planet primarily work with local NGOs or local governments? How do you engage with coastal communities?
Yeah, so for now, GEO Blue Planet has been working mainly with the UN entities such as UNEP and the IOC. But we're trying, and especially with the marine litter and the Sargassum, to work directly with more regional communities, such as fisheries cooperation, regional cooperation centers. And to do this, we're going through these big UN entities, but also we are studying collaborations with the Cartagena and the Abidjan conventions, and we are hoping to reach out to these communities in this manner. But for now, GEO Blue Planet has been working with the UN level, and we are actually talking and aiming to work more directly with local and regional communities.
Great. And then last question, there's a lot of interest in the chat for wanting to be part of GEO Blue Planet. What is the process of becoming either a member or some sort of participant? What are the different ways people could participate within Blue Planet, and how do they do it?
Well, I think it's a really, really interesting question, because that's a question Emily and I are discussing right now, because I think GEO Blue Planet has reached that maturity where we can actually, taking more people and arrange collaboration and networking. And also because the UN decade is coming up, and it's bringing a lot of, it's moving everything around, bringing more collaboration opportunities. And so I think that the number one thing to do is just send us an email. So either to the info@geoblueplanet.org, or you can send it directly to Emily or I, and we can discuss it, because I think there is room for many more people at every level, creating working groups or just working in our core action in the working groups. And we're definitely trying to get more global, incorporating more people from Africa, from Asia, from Southern America. And I think that's just the way to do it, is to send us an email. And then we have the different committees that I've presented earlier, and we are deciding on like a more formal process to select the projects and how we help them throughout their lives, and how do we sunset these projects. So this is a good time to send us an email if you are interested in working with us or participating in a project or anything really. So send us an email. That's my one message.
Great. Well, we are at the top of the hour, so if I didn't get to your questions, I'm sorry, but please reach out to Emily and Audrey. And thank you both again for sharing GEO Blue Planet, and for our participants for asking your questions. Again, if you have any more questions or want more information, please reach out to Emily and Audrey. And we hope to see you at next week's Air Center Networking Fridays. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all for joining, and thank you so much to the Air Center for hosting.
Thank you all.